How is AI reshaping customer experiences and driving modernization across industries? If that is what you want to understand, welcome to this episode 85 of XTraw AI, where we are hosting a compelling roundtable discussion with two distinguished experts in the field, Dave Hoekstra from Calabrio and Sara Faatz from Progress. And today, Dave and Sara will help us unpack the pivotal role AI plays in enhancing customer engagement and streamlining operations. We'll explore innovative strategies and the latest technologies that are setting new standards for customer experience, customer service, and business efficiency. And a few words about Sara Faatz and Dave Hoekstra. Sara Faatz leads the technology community relations team at Progress. With more than 20 years in the software development space, she has spent the majority of her career building community, producing events, forging partnerships, and creating content and marketing programs for the ground up. She's a mom, a wife, and a woman in tech who is a passionate advocate for equality and diversity. And Dave Hoekstra is the product evangelist at Calabrio. He combines about over 2 decades of experience in the contact center industry with his rich personal life as a father, a grandfather, bassist, podcast host, and photographer. His journey through various positions in the industry has given him a comprehensive understanding of the tools and challenges faced by customer experience organizations. Dave's role goes beyond promoting products. He's a knowledgeable advisor, sharing insights on industry trends and technological advancements. His unique perspective, shaped by professional expertise and personal interests, allows him to connect meaningfully with others in the field, providing guidance and support in a rapidly evolving industry. As always, you'll find more details at the end of the podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the podcast conversation. All right, welcome back to our XTraw AI podcast conversations. And today is another AI roundtable. And today we're going to discuss on the topic of customer experiences, modernization, and a bit of ethical AI as well. And today I've got two guests, Sara Faatz, Director, Technology Communication, Community Relations from Progress. And of course, we also have Dave Hoekstra, Product Evangelist from Calabrio. Welcome on board, Sara, and welcome on board, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
So first, I will maybe start with you, Sara. Could you give a brief background or maybe a personal or a professional story about how you got into AI or what made you get into this sphere of things? And I know a lot of things are happening now around AI in general.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you again for having us today. I'm excited to be here. AI has been around for 75 years, right? I mean, it's not like it's new, but what is new is, generative AI has moved AI into the hands of everyone, right? And so it's democratized it in a very big way, similar to the way the smartphone democratized IT. So to talk about how I got into it is actually really, it's a challenge to pinpoint one thing, but I can tell you one of the things that I'm super passionate about right now, and one thing that I know we'll probably talk about later today, is this juxtaposition between AI, which is very much it's a ones and zeros play, it's a numbers play, and the human side of software, right? Where we need to have empathy, we need to have emotion, and how you can actually leverage how technology is actually helping aid in that human side of software and making technology more accessible and more inclusive to people, and the things that we have to be thinking about and worried about. So, I mean, I think, there are a million different ways I could talk about how I've personally used AI and how it's impacted my life, from small things like trip planning, to broader, making tasks easier to use. But I think really the bigger thing for me is just that idea that where we are today with AI is really at a tipping point to help bring technology and humans even closer.
Beautiful, beautiful. I like the aspect of the humanness that you put into this and how you can bring human beings closer to technology and make better things.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
coming to you, Dave, maybe could you give a brief background about your interaction with AI or your experiences, personal or professional story, about how you came across?
Yeah, my experience with AI is basically using Amazon Alexa every day. No, I'm just kidding. It's more than that. But we uh, to me, AI for me it's sneaky. It's been very sneaky in our lives, right? It reminds me of when the internet first started. The first time I opened Netscape Navigator and typed in a few words into some weird search engine called Google that nobody had really heard of, and then it was like, oh wow, I have some information available to me, and then your brain thinks of a little bit different way of using it, a little different way of using it. And just like Sarah said, I don't think I could last 5 minutes without some sort of internet connectivity in my life. Don't try it. If you've ever been on a cruise ship and you don't have internet, your brain short circuits completely while you're on. But and that's what AI is going to be very much like. Like right now, AI is this like chat GPT party trick, kind of a cool little thing. And we're all like, yeah, look, it's cool. I can make like a top 10 list of something neat. And it gives us this little cool thing. And everybody's like, yay. And then, but in like a year from now, we're going to look back and go, oh, wait a minute, like everything we're doing is using this. And, now that chat GPT is kind of a part of our lives for about a year, it's finally starting to, businesses are starting to figure out, this actually used it. And, it's sad because I've already gotten to the point, and Sarah, I'm sure you're just like this, and you too, Raghu, as well, where you can open up an article on the internet and you're like, that was written by AI, and it reads just like my freshman college papers. That's how good it is. And so for me, we tend to look at AI very much from the provider perspective, right? So our customers are using AI to make them better at helping their customers. And so where we look at it from a perspective of, all right, how can we automate workflows? How can we make things faster? How can we make it to where the human experience is more valuable and not less? And I think that's the real key of where we need to be with AI at the moment is, yes, AI is going to take care of all. It's like farming equipment, right? Back in the day, everything was done by hand. And then someone invented the steam engine, and then someone figured out a way to plow fields using the steam engine. And everybody probably, wait, what about all these people that plow fields? And we don't have to worry about those people anymore. We're in the same boat right now as we get closer. So I'm really excited about what AI is, little bit scared, but mostly excited about where it's going.
Beautiful, beautiful, amazing background. So, yeah, I think you touched upon many of these aspects about how it is changing our lives and how it is changing our businesses and the way we interact with the technology and other things. So, coming to you, Sarah, for me, let us get started on this. I know we have been interacting in our daily lives, and we see that AI is transforming all these enterprises and consumer businesses in different ways. Maybe in the context of customer experiences or ethical AI, which you briefly mentioned.
Right.
How do you see AI transforming here, and what are your thoughts?
Right. I think one of the biggest concerns from human interactions in general, right, whether you're creating a digital experience or not, is the fact that we all have this unconscious bias, right? And there is a risk in leveraging AI to help continue to propagate that unconscious bias, but there's also the potential for us from a customer experience perspective to identify that unconscious bias using AI. So flipping the script, right? And instead of propagating unconscious bias, it allows us to find the unconscious bias that we've built in as humans. And that goes back to, that allows us to provide more accessible content, more accessible digital experiences, more inclusive experiences. It allows you to localize content in ways that maybe you hadn't ever done before. And with that, we were able to, again, bring that human side of software closer by leveraging a very non-human technology. And so that to me, again, I think looking at we're spending a lot of time thinking about accessibility. We're thinking a lot about inclusivity. How are our tools accessible and inclusive, but also how can we enable other people to be accessible and inclusive in their creation of their digital experience. So by leveraging AI, you can, again, like I mentioned, mitigate some of those risks.
Beautiful. I completely echo your thoughts on that. So coming to you, Dave, in the same aspect, I know you have been interacting a lot in your enterprise journey, or when you're dealing with your customers or your customers' customers. You know that there are a lot of things that you need to take care when you talk about these different customer experiences. What are some of those current AI innovations, or maybe generative AI innovations, which are close to your heart, or which you think will make, or you folks have to focus a bit more on?
I think, Sarah, you hit it just absolutely. Bringing people closer together, like connecting things. And so my favorite one, I'll tell you, this just happened to me. I live in the US, if you can't tell by my accent, but I had to go to the other side of the world, into Norway and Denmark and Sweden and Finland. And we were talking to customers there, and I used AI to automatically translate a video of myself speaking Finnish. And my lips moved like I was speaking Finnish, my teeth, and I spoke Finnish. And at the end, I asked the audience, how well did that work? And they were like, it was perfect. Like if you hadn't told us, we wouldn't have probably even known that you don't speak Finnish. And that's amazing. I mean, and so, yes, we can talk doom and gloom about, oh, what about all these translators that are going to lose their jobs? And yes, we need to make sure we're very conscious of that and ethical about making sure that we're not just cutting wide swaths of jobs and removing people's ability to earn a living. But from a human perspective, I connected with a room full of 100 Finns through AI. And that's amazing. And not only, it's not just Finnish, but I did it in Swedish and I did it in Danish. And I don't speak any syllable of those languages, let alone, I don't know it at all. And so these are the kind of things that while AI, I heard somebody say a while ago that for every one thing we're afraid of, there are 100 things that AI is going to benefit us in our lives. But we don't often stop and think about that. Think about the ability for someone to literally pick up the phone and have a conversation across the globe and never worried about language barriers ever again. Never worrying about being able to effectively communicate correctly. Those are things that are disappearing rapidly with AI. And that's what's so exciting about, from a personal perspective and our customers' perspectives, right? It's the same idea of being able to eliminate those barriers that we haven't even thought of yet. Things we just naturally, as human beings, from day to day, spend our time not thinking about because they've been a barrier our entire lives. All of a sudden, that's no longer a barrier. I can effectively walk into any store in the world, and as long as I have a smartphone in front of me, I can communicate now. That's insane. And so, yeah, sign me up for the AI revolution. That's where I'd like to go.
Dave, you mentioned jobs, and I think it's really interesting to think about the fact that, going back to, it's not gloom and doom, right? The idea is, and you touched on it a little bit earlier already with your farming example, but there are so many opportunities that I think AI is going to afford. There are going to be people, and I'm not even talking about, prompt engineering, but it's how do you change? I think there are jobs that we don't even know exist. At 10 years from now, we're going to be like, oh yeah, if it hadn't been for AI, we wouldn't have had this, right? And you're talking about the localization quickly. There is still always going to be a need for linguistics and people who are behind that. So I think it's exciting as well. And I agree with you. I don't think it's all gloom and doom. I think it's a little scary to think that you looked exactly like you were speaking Finnish and Swedish, but I think, there's, it's still also, I think the benefit of that, like you said, to be able to communicate with and connect with people in a different way is phenomenal.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
So I think this is where I believe we come to see maybe there are new industries that might even crop up with with the different technology or the different innovations that are happening. We might think that, hey, some of these jobs are going to go away, but we don't even understand, or we can't even comprehend what other things might open up. So staying on that aspect, or maybe going a bit on your background, I think, Dave, I know you're coming from the contact center industry background. I think you have been working, you have had some experience in there. So maybe could you provide some thoughts about how the landscape of this of customer experience in the contact center industry has evolved over the last 2 decades? And what are the trends that we have noticed? And what is happening in there? Because this is where now a lot of AI might also be impacting in that industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so the thing that is growing exponentially is the ability for a customer to self-service, right? So again, 20 years ago, if I needed to know, if I owed the water company money, I had to call them. And there had to be a human being, and I said, how much do I owe you? And they would say, it's $32.75. And I'd say, thank you. And then I'd write a check, and then I'd put it in an envelope and I'd mail it, right? All of those things are gone now. We don't do any of those things anymore. Now I simply log on to a website and or as a matter of fact, usually what happens is it just automatically gets charged to my account. And then I get a nice little email or a text message and I'm done. Now, self-service is now starting to evolve to where it's less, even the more complex, what would have been considered complex 20 years ago is now being completely managed. When I return a package on Amazon, I can do it through a chatbot, and the chatbot coordinates the whole thing for me. I don't have a human being. I can now cancel orders. I can order things. I can literally speak to a little box over here and have that box order something and deliver it to my house without a human being interacting with anything. And this is the trend that's going to continue to evolve. Now, one of the biggest fears that in our contact center industry is that, again, let's talk about jobs. All of these agents, all of these human beings that are out there that answer these phone calls, they're all nobody's gonna have a job in 2 years and 5 years. I mean, it's been every year, it's been 2 years or 5 years that all these people are gonna lose their jobs. But what's really interesting is, as we're seeing, is as self-service gets better, the complex issues get more complex. And that's the beauty of it, is that all it's really doing is shifting the scale of what is self-service. We're not seeing a wide elimination of positions, but when you have that, okay, so here's what happened. I got to explain, and I got to talk to the billing department. I got to talk to the finance department. I got to talk. Those complex issues are still being handled by humans, but those humans are now able to dedicate much more time and energy and focus to those complex issues, because all of those little piddly ones that are sitting out there are being handled by the self-service. So that's, to me, the rapid evolvement is how much is now included in being able to self-serve, but we're still have just as many complex issues out there. And that's the fun part, is we need smarter humans now. We need more critical thinking humans to do these things, as opposed to back in the day when we could have 80% of the, what's my account balance? Oh, that's easy. I can do that. There's no more easy when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's all of it's hard, and we need smarter people, but we still need people.
I had a friend who just recently was talking to me about the same kind of thing, Dave, and she was talking about the concept of humans in the loop, right? So AI provides enough aid to the complex scenarios that you're talking about, and pulls the humans in when the generative AI can't take care of it anymore, when you need it. So 100% agree with what you're saying, right? Being able to have the human in the loop doesn't mean that humans are gone completely. It just means, like you said, these more complex scenarios become something that are easier to resolve quicker, which is actually a wonderful thing when you're talking about customer experience, right?
Yeah, I have a good example of that is in the contact center industry, one of the things that we deal with is kind of forecasting volumes, right? So how many calls or chats are we going to get tomorrow, next week, things like that. And the ability for software to predict that is getting better and better and better. But It doesn't matter how forward thinking I can go. I still cannot envision a scenario where AI or a computer can say, I need to go back to last Monday, figure out why we got way more calls than we used to. And the reason we got way more calls than we used to is because Janice in marketing accidentally sent a coupon out to 500 of our customers, and they all called in and to try and take advantage of the coupon, but we shouldn't have done that. Like, that is a 19-step process that I really will struggle. Now, we may go back to this podcast 10 years from now and go, Dave, see, you were totally wrong. You don't have any idea what you're talking about. But that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're still going to need human beings to step through that very complex, and it all ultimately comes down to understanding human behavior. AI is going to struggle to understand human behavior for a long, long time, and there will always be a place for us.
Exactly. I completely echo with your thoughts, and I think this is where customer experience comes into mind, right? Like now, maybe coming to you, Sara, I think I would like to bring up this aspect of, I know AI is becoming more sophisticated in its capabilities and its understanding of what has to be done, all these complex concepts, and we have discussed about this context-centered industry. But how can the developers, they can harness AI to keep this customer experience in mind? Maybe a few thoughts that you would like to provide in that aspect.
Absolutely. I mean, I think probably the first thing is, and we've talked about it, touched on it a couple of times, the idea that you can leverage AI to streamline and automate certain tasks. You can take, that allows you to spend more time on that experience side of things, right? So as a developer, there are tools that exist right now. Microsoft obviously has a ton of, Microsoft Copilot. Even within our Sitefinity CMS tool, we have tools that allow you to leverage AI to create and optimize pages, with a click of a button, basically. But what that does is allows you to focus on different things, right? So you can think about, what does make this a better experience for my customer? What is this, and so if you're thinking about app logic and you don't have to focus on just the core base of the code, right? You can think about how can I make this more sophisticated without adding more complexity, right? Which is also, the more complex we become on the back end should provide a more simple and intuitive interface for our customers on the front end. And so, it's exciting to me, the tools that are available today, even people playing around with just ChatGPT, not the Copilot portion of things, but, it does a pretty decent job of generating at least the base code that allows you to then, you then need to tweak it and make it your own. And there are some risks that you have to think about when you're using, especially an open tool. But yeah, from a developer perspective, it really does, it saves you time, right? I mean, pure and simple, and then gives you that opportunity to think more about better ways to enhance your user experience and customer experience.
And Sara, let me ask you, do you think, let's go back to 20 years ago, the coding tools that were available. If you were to fast forward somebody from 20 years ago would they be upset at how easy it is for us today?
No, not at all. Yeah.
And I think that's the point, right?
100%.
Is that we get so nervous and freaked out, but it'd be like, oh my gosh, there's a little bit of a grumpy old man, like, back in my day we didn't need these fancy tools. But that's what I think is really exciting, is that as we grow, we're growing faster and faster and faster and faster. But let's stop thinking about the negative ramifications quite so much. We do need to be sure we're paying attention to that, but more focus on, like, wow, look at how amazing this is. That's where I want to get excited about.
Well, and I think also to that point, thinking about, there are things that we should be concerned about, but not everything, right? So I think focus on where do we want to put that concern? And to me, it's things like, from a developer perspective, in open models of generative AI tools, people were finding, because generative AI can hallucinate, right? They were finding NPM packages that didn't actually exist. So they were then creating them and adding malware to them, right? Those are the things that kind of thing 100% we should be worried about. We should be thinking about, we should try to mitigate that risk as much as possible. When it comes to, is this going to take a developer's job? The answer is absolutely not. The answer is, how does a developer evolve with the technology that exists today? And that actually isn't a question that's just being posed because of generative AI. That's a question that's posed all the time because, as you mentioned, technology is rapidly changing all the time.
We're the problem, not them.
Yeah. I would like to stay a bit on that aspect a bit more, Sarah. And then I know there will be some challenges for the developers to use these AI tools in such a way. Maybe you want to briefly talk a bit about that. I know things are getting better over a period of time, and things will get better. But currently, are there any challenges that are being faced when developers are using these tools? And
sure. I mean, I think you need to understand what the tool is that you're using. I think you need to understand if there are, where the large language model is, right, and how it's being trained. I think that those are the kinds of things that we should be mindful of. I think I think that you can leverage the way I would recommend developers using it today. I would use it as a starting point, right? Use it to check code, as long as that's not proprietary code. That's a huge thing. That's, you don't want to put proprietary code out there that could be then consumed and shared out in other ways. So you have to think about those kinds of things. But if you're just writing a simple, you want a simple web app, right? Or just a simple component, you want to test that, run it through a ChatGPT or similar kind of tool. And then learn from there, right? I think we need to think about where in the development process we bring in a generative AI tool. And so those are the kinds of things to think about. And it doesn't, again, to Dave's point, not everything is doom and gloom, right? It's just making sure that we're mindful of the tool that we're using, where the LLM comes from, how it's being trained, and that we're not sharing anything that we wouldn't otherwise want out there.
Beautifully, very well said. Now, coming back to you, Dave, as a product evangelist, I know you've been working on a lot of these tools, a lot of these innovative AI tools. What do you think, or maybe could you share some insights on how customer experience, how these tools that when you're using, how you can enhance the customer experience?
Yeah, it basically comes down to one very simple statement: does it work? Right? Because, I mean, I can call a company, and the phone system could deliver me to the person who has worked there for 15 years and knows everything about every policy. And, oh, I know exactly, I've seen this before, and boom, I'm done. And the customer experience is amazing. Then the same call could get routed to the person who's worked there for 2 weeks, and I spend an hour and a half on the phone. I don't get my problem resolved. I have to call back 3 different times. It doesn't work. That's human beings. It's the same thing with the AI and the self-service, right? Does it work? And if it works, we're going to use it. That bottom line. I think most people, even for me, as you can tell, I'm a little bit introverted. I'm not big on even me as an extreme extrovert, I would rather not talk to a human being. When I have an issue, if I can have a chat with my internet service provider and this can fix the problem and it's all done without interacting with a human, great. That's a time saver on my part, and leave that more complex issue for the agent who knows what they're doing. And so that to me is the real crux of everything that we're doing with AI. What I'm talking about from a customer perspective, and what Sara is talking about from a developer and web perspective, does it work? Can I load a web app into ChatGPT and build it for me? It's like, okay, why wouldn't I use that? That I would be silly to not use that. But if it doesn't work, those developers lose confidence in ChatGPT. We don't really like to spend a lot of time figuring out why it didn't work. We just kind of say, okay, I've been burned once, and I don't know if I really want to go through that. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge for customers using AI-based technology is we all love those little chat messages that pop up in the bottom right-hand corner of every web page that we come to. How can I help you? Right? And how many of us go, boy, I'd sure like to give that a try? No, most of the time we don't, because a lot of us are missing that confidence in that. So we as providers of AI need to spend a lot more time building that consumer confidence in our products, so that we do trust them. But it will come around if they start to work. It's just like any other system. You could talk about sports, you could talk about games. If the tactic works, other people will start to use it, and people will become more confident in it. And that's really what our overall goal should be. Does it work? And if not, we need to make it work.
And I think the interesting thing there, Dave, is that especially in a post-COVID world, right, our reliance on technology is so much more. We're so much more sophisticated than we were even 4 years ago, right? And things that were activities that were once something you did in person, now people are expecting to have that experience in a digital format of some kind. And so I think that, to your point about having customer confidence in your technology, there is this, if it doesn't work right away, there used to be this kind of like, you know what, it's kind of a cool thing, I'll give it a shot. If it doesn't work now, they're saying, well, wait a minute, why isn't this working? It should work. It's, and I personally had something similar to that. Last year, I was working with a piece of software and had a question for the people who had built it. And I typed in the chatbot, and it gave me the most ridiculous responses known to man. And I found myself really irritated, because I'm like, you know what? It should just work, right? It's 2023 at the time. I'm like, how is it possible that this doesn't? And so I think as users become more reliant on it, their patience for something not working or having a subpar experience it's just not there, right? And so we have to earn that by making sure that the experiences we're building they deliver on the promise of ease of use and helping aid in productivity, as opposed to adding more time to their busy day, right?
Yeah, it can't just be a party trick, right?
Exactly.
And that's what I laugh about, the Amazon Echoes and the Google Assistants and things like that. We all went out and bought those smart speakers for our houses, right? And we got 10 of them, and literally, like, the only thing that they get used for is my granddaughter plays songs from Frozen on it. Right? That's it. And the promise of that never really equated what we wanted to get out of it. But now we're the stakes are much higher. Now, right, we're talking about commerce continue to exist based on AI. We're talking about taking vast swatches of unstructured data and turning it into real intelligence. So the stakes are much, much higher now before the smart speaker revolution. And so that's why we have to be careful. We have to be ethical, but we have to also continue to make it better. And even us, if I'm looking at it through a lens of being a customer, I have to try those things. When I go to a website, I have to say, you know what? All right, I'm going to give it a shot and see if you can answer my question. And I'd rather be pleasantly surprised than frustrated, but doesn't mean it always works. But they are getting better. But we also, as consumers, have to continue to try to put these things through the paces so that we can make them better.
Beautiful. So I think at this juncture, maybe I want to take a bit of a diversion. Maybe I want to go into the aspect of, I know these are great tools out there, great innovations happening, and we know that how on the development side of these tools, there is a lot of efforts being put, and on the consumption side of the things, how these are being used. Now, I want to focus a bit on to see how these innovative AI tools can realistically improve the experiences of certain populations, right? I think this is where you initially touched upon, right? Like Sara, about maybe ranging from inclusivity to accessibility and other aspects. We want to talk a few words about how realistically we can improve the experiences of certain range of populations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think when you think about how we can leverage AI to learn more about our customers in general, right? And the more you know about your customers or users, and I'm talking from an application perspective, whether it's a website or desktop application, the more insights you have into those people and their behaviors and their, it allows us to better build for them, right? The interesting thing is, User testing is something everybody should be doing all the time. AI allows you to user test without, kind of have a constant user test. You'll find sometimes that people are using your applications in ways you never intended. So that's one area, right, where you can leverage those insights. But you can also find perhaps that people aren't able to do the things that you think they can or should be doing. When we talk about inclusive design for software, accessibility is one part of that, right? But there are other aspects of inclusive design as well. It could be localization, it could be your visuals, it could be, there are a lot of different things. But to take, for example, a form, right? If you're having somebody fill out a form, and you come from a maybe a North American country where last names are very short, right? You could potentially not have enough room in your form for somebody to put their entire name. That isn't not an inclusive design, right? And you might start to see that if you see people dropping off in certain places. Having a form that times out too quickly, right? If you haven't localized and you start to see that you have customers coming from different regions and different parts of the world where English isn't their first language, or perhaps you have somebody who has broken their arm, right? And so you don't have forms, but by understanding and leveraging AI to find those insights, you can then fix some of those and provide a more optimal journey for your customers and your users. And then I had touched upon it a little as well. When you think about unconscious bias, being able to identify that, unconscious bias by definition is something we don't know that we have, right? So by being able to you can leverage AI tools, and there are different tools out there, some open source and some paid tools that allow you to actually analyze and scrutinize your code and your applications to see where that unconscious bias might exist. And that to me is really compelling, especially when we think about the fact that, going back to the idea that for the most part, digital experiences are in many cases replacing that initial first human interaction. So the more empathetic we can be in the code that we're writing and the experience we're delivering, obviously the better experience it's going to be across the board.
Sarah, I am 100% sure that I do not have unconscious bias. So I'm positive.
So maybe I think to continue the conversation, right, Dave, on the customer contact center space, like where you're coming in from, your experience that comes in from, how do you see these being handled with all these AI innovations?
Yeah, so like we've talked about, the speed is a big part of contact center success, right? The faster you can handle one interaction with a customer, the faster you can get to the next one, right? And if your speed is lower, you need fewer resources to do the same amount of work. It's what we call an Erlang calculation in our world. So a lot of the AI innovations that have been focused on the contact center world have been specifically about that. How can we? So here's a common example in the contact center world. Every time you call into your bank or an organization and you talk to an agent, as soon as you're done with that agent, the agent has to tell their phone, don't send me any more calls because I need to notate the account, right? So Sarah called in and had questions about how to use the product, and she also was curious about how much it would be to add on, so that if the next time Sarah calls in, the other agent can review her interactions and see, here's a customer history, and I kind of know what's going on. That's always, since the very first phone call I took in 1997, that's the way it's been done. Now, AI can take a recording of the call, take that transcribe that recording, feed it through a summarization, an AI summarization tool, and we can automatically summarize that call and notate the account without the agent needing to do any of that work. Now, it's funny because we all think, oh my gosh, that's a total win-win scenario because the agent is on to the next call and the summarization is spelled perfectly and there's no grammatical errors and everything is captured. But there's actually a drawback to that too, because that process of notating the account is also what gets that human being a mental break before taking the next call. Because if you've never worked in a contact center before as an agent, it's a mind-numbingly boring existence sometimes. And that mental break, even that 30 seconds before the next call, gives you a chance to kind of refocus and breathe. But if boom, the next call, boom, the next call, boom, the next call, we're going to be right back where we started with this process. So AI is making those calls go more quickly. So maybe we teach the agents to spend a little bit more time with the customer, show a little bit more empathy, show a little bit more humanity to them. And the customer walks away and says, "Oh, that was great." And the agent feels like they have a chance to breathe a little bit. So those are the kind of innovations we're seeing rapidly come into the contact center space. It's all about shortening the length of these interactions so we can process them more quickly. But the summarization is huge in the contact center industry. That's what we're seeing a lot of right now.
And Dave, in the summarization, do you normally put, this customer was audibly upset, right? Because you're not going to be able to access that with, or have that with, from an AI perspective, at least not today, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious how would you solve for that today for something like that?
Well, generally, based on my experience, we were often trained not to really try and put just the facts, ma'am.
Yeah,
Like,
gotcha.
right? It's just the facts. But a human being can't help but put, like, she screamed at me for an hour, right? Those kind of things in the summarization. So yeah, but there are other tools available that are enabling that, so we can do things like sentiment analysis of the interaction.
Yes.
There is speech energy. There's a full transcription of the call. So if we do need to go back, right, there's a number of tools. So the summarization may not necessarily capture that, but the overall, there are other tools that are built into where I can say, show me every call from yesterday where somebody was really, really upset. And you can see that, right? So we mitigate that a little bit through some different areas in technology. But you're right, the summarization, it's not always going to capture, but that's not always the reason we did it. The reason we did it was to make sure that the next person knew what happened on that call, regardless of their emotion and intent.
Yeah, and interesting, isn't it great though how voice to text also has come such a long way? I have a friend who years ago, when voice to text was a new thing, even just on her phone, right? She lived on the West Coast. Her boss was on the East Coast, and he had texted her or messaged her early in the morning, her time, and she said, "I'll get back to you in a minute," she said, and I'm going to hop in the shower real quick. And it came out, "I'm roller skating in the shower." And, and obviously, those were earlier days, but it's amazing to see how far we've come even from that, So when we talk about AI and where we are today with generative AI, it, like you said, 5-10 years from now, the conversation might be it will be very different. And there will probably be some things that we laugh about then, like clearly not roller skating in the shower, but hopping in the shower.
And I think about, in all the futuristic movies that you see, the person comes home from work, sets their keys on the table, and then says lights, and all the lights magically turn on. We can do that today. But my question is, nobody wants to talk out loud to these things, right? Nobody wants to stand in a crowded square with their phone and then say, give me a summarization of why the Notre Dame Cathedral is. We're still very private with that information. And to me, that's going to be where this eventually evolves, is how we can communicate with AI without necessarily speaking it out loud into the universe.
Right. I think that is where I think we are heading, right? I think how we can privatize this, or maybe privacy oriented, or how in safe spaces, how you can handle these things.
Right. Yeah.
Very interesting conversation. I would like to come to the important question of the conversation generally I do in the podcast. I think first maybe I'll go to you, Dave. $1 million or $1 billion question. What I try to ask my guests is about the differentiation factor. I know there is a lot of competition out there with Calabrio. What do you think is the differentiation factor, or what is the uniqueness? Maybe in one word, one sentence, one phrase, or whatever.
This is completely the antithesis of the entire conversation that we've had. But the differentiator for us is our human beings, right? The way we can empathize, we can understand the way we respond, the way we work with our customers. Yes, we try to give these amazing technological tools that are great with the button you click or the thing that happens in the background. But so much of the the acquisition process of bringing in customers is still so human driven. And that's our differentiator, is how we train, how we respond, how we listen. And I know this does not fit in an AI conversation for a podcast, but that's the answer for us, is that we want to give great technology, but behind that technology is a really awesome set of people who really know how to listen and have experience in this field to know how to handle the next scenario that pops up and be ready for that.
Beautiful. Amazing. Amazing. Coming over to you, Sara, like again, the same question. What is that one word or one sentence or one uniqueness from Progress?
Right. Well, I would also was thinking human side, right? Ours is the human side of software with a spirit of experimentation, right? So from the people behind what we're doing are thinking about ethics and AI, and they're thinking about the user experience, and not just our user experience, but the user experience for the people who are then using the tools that are built with our tools, right? And being able to provide next generation technology, right, for in a way that again is safe and ethical, and really leaning into the value proposition that we make things easier for our developers and IT pros. We make it easier for marketing people who are leveraging our CMS, and we make them far more productive, right? And so again, I love your answer, Dave, because the human side of software is near and dear to my heart.
Sorry, it kind of sounds like I stole your answer. I apologize.
You did, that's okay. But I think the beauty of that is that it still can be a unique differentiator for both of us, right? Because there is, and that when we go back to the juxtaposition between AI, which it is a little bit more, well, it's much more robotic, and humans are so unique, right? And so the value proposition can be the same for both sides of the house, and then how we leverage that non-empathetic technology to be more empathetic is truly a key differentiator. And it sounds like for both of us, Dave.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I completely echo with your thoughts, like the non-empathetic technology, how it can make it even more empathetic and make it much more humane and make it much more human experience. So, we are getting to the end of the conversation, but any key takeaways or insights that you would like to provide to our audience out there? Sara, maybe I'll go first with you.
I mean, I think I'll go back to what Dave said. I'm going to steal one of your answers, Dave, is that it was, we're in a really exciting time, right? And the benefits that we will see as a global society from AI, I think are things that we can't even at this point quantify. There are risks, and I think that we need to be mindful of those, but it shouldn't stop experimentation. It shouldn't stop us from trying to build new things. And we should evolve as a species. We should evolve as developers, on my side at least of the house, to find different ways to not just implement the technology and go beyond the hype, right? So, generative AI is the buzz phrase right now, but AI, as I mentioned before, it's been around 75 years. It was I don't know if you guys are aware of this, you probably are, but the Dartmouth Summer Research Project on AI conference, where the logic theorist was presented, that was 75 years ago, right? So this is not a new concept, and we should be, it's just such an exciting time to see if we take the hype out of things and say, we've democratized AI, right? The citizen developer, the citizens of the world can use AI in some way, shape, or form. Our job is then to say, how can we harness that to make this a world a better place to live in? How can we make our apps more accessible? How can we make our apps more inclusive? And how can we make everybody more productive and in the end happier? So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, great piece of advice there, right? How can we make everybody more inclusive and make it more easier for everybody to develop, provide the same opportunities and make it much more easier to address the problems out there, I think, and leveraging the human experience here.
Absolutely, yeah.
And over to you, Dave, any closing remarks or key insights that you could provide our audience. I know. Great
No,
conversation.
honestly, Sarah said it so well, and I'll just take what she said even a step further. What I look for is the exciting things of AI that we necessarily haven't thought of yet, right? The things that I could try to speculate, but we haven't thought of them yet because we haven't thought of them yet, right? That's the reason why. But what I'm really looking forward to is, from a personal perspective, how AI can help me be more productive. That how I'm still blown away at the fact that Google Maps can tell me how long it's going to take me to get somewhere, and it's right. Like, how can it do that? And that's been around for a while. That still blows me away. But what's really exciting is the next phases of AI where we solve things like how to get water to communities that don't have water. How do we capture the watershed from a topographical map and put things in the right places from AI? Just this insane amount of data that's out there. How do we logistically get food from one area of the world to another to make populations healthier? Those are things that probably are already happening, and I'm sure there's somebody listening going, "Oh, shh, don't say that. That's our idea," right? But those are the things that I'm really excited about from a humanity perspective. And as much as the movie The Terminator scared us all about AI, I think that the beautiful thing about the movie Terminator and Skynet is that it taught us that from the very beginning we need to be ethical with our AI, and I'm actually really glad that it happened that way, because I don't think if we weren't scared going into this thing, I don't think that we might have built some of the guardrails that are perhaps keeping AI in check a little bit. And we may listen to this podcast in 10 years and go, well, we were so wrong. But that's the exciting thing for me is kind of the next thing that we haven't thought of yet.
And I think being mindful of that, though, when you go back to ethical AI, I think there are a lot of opportunities for us to continue to think about making sure that we continue to build the guardrails and that we keep checks and balances on those guardrails. There are a lot of laws and regulations already in place, right? Which is pretty amazing when you think about how new AI, I said, is obviously not new, but the way that we're consuming it and leveraging it is absolutely new, right? And so to be able to have these different regulations in place to help make sure that we remain ethical is pretty phenomenal. And I don't think you're wrong, Dave. I think we're going to be. I think in 5 years, if you and I hopped back on this podcast, we would probably be saying, really glad we continue to think about that from an ethics perspective. Mm-hmm. And I think there are enough people who are thinking about it on a regular basis that they're going to find all the loopholes here and there.
And I will still be blown away by Google Maps.
Yeah,
so
me too. I know I'm one of those ones who used to have like an atlas,
I think nowadays we can't even. We don't put our mind for minimal things, right? I think get in the car and just press the button and it will take you where it has to be taken.
Right.
So
those are the things we can use it for the purposes that we need.
It's funny, speaking along those lines, I had a girlfriend coming down to visit. I live in Florida, she's in Canada, and she landed in the States and her phone wasn't working. And she said the first thing she thought of is, oh my gosh, how am I going to get a hold of Sarah? Like, what am I going to do? And we both started laughing because there was a time not that long ago that, she wasn't going to call me on a pay, what is she going to call me from a payphone if I'm in my car? There's no way to do that. And so, we kind of had to readjust our brains to think about, how do we interact in a world where we don't have that connectivity? And I think that that's going to be one thing that we should all be mindful of, even as AI makes us more productive. If something goes down, we should not have it completely replace our ability to think and interact with people moving forward.
Yeah,
that is where the human element stays.
Absolutely.
That is where I keep saying that humans can't be replaceable. Whatever you might do, you will still need to be there, and a lot of things are dependent. Great having this conversation with both of you. I really loved it.
Thank you. It was wonderful. It was great to talk to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. All right, so that concludes a dynamic and insightful episode 85 of XTraw AI. Firstly, I would like to say a huge thank you to our roundtable guests, Sara Faatz and Dave Hoekstra, for their invaluable contributions today. Their expertise in leveraging AI to enhance customer experiences and drive business modernization has provided us with a wealth of knowledge and practical insights. And we also wanted to thank you all, our audience, and deepest gratitude to you for joining us in this engaging discussion. Your interest and participation are what makes XTraw AI a hub for learning about the latest trends and technologies in AI. As always, I will be tagging our guests, Sara Faatz and Dave Hoekstra, on the LinkedIn post. If you have any further questions, you can directly reach out to them, or you can alternatively reach out to me, Raghu Banda, on LinkedIn, and I can put you in touch with them. You can also reach out to me on my other social media channels, like my Twitter or X handle, @Banda, or of course, you can also go to our website, XTrawAI.com, XTrawAI.com, where you can find humongous amount of other episodes in the context of AI in the domain of. So looking ahead, make sure that you stay glued to XTraw AI for our next episode, where we will dive into the world of consulting and advisory in the age of AI. It's said to be another enlightening discussion, exploring how AI is transforming the consulting industry and what it means for businesses and advisors alike. Of course, if you haven't subscribed to the XTraw AI podcast yet, we encourage you to do so now. This way, you won't miss any of our upcoming episodes, which are filled with expert insights and forward-thinking discussions. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we look forward to having you with us for the next time on XTraw AI. Happy predicting the future with AI technologies. And this is your host, Raghu Banda, signing off. Thank you and bye-bye now.